Go ahead, Miss Ash.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to CRWS book reading today. Today, we'll be reading and analyzing the Office of Strategic Services Declassified Simple Sabotage Field Manual. Um, this document is a declassified document from the Office of Strategic Services that was formed in 1942 by FDR during World War II, and after it became the precursor to the CIA, what we know now. So all of the documentation from the OSS was given to the CIA, and you can see a lot of the information within this field manual is still used today. If you think about COINTELPRO, which is the counterintelligence program that was set up by the FBI. It was basically to disrupt and cause a lot of confusion within organizations in the 60s and even till today. And so this is a really important manual to read because it's what we would call a code for the white supremacists. And so it's good for us to understand this and be able to see how they can use simple things to sabotage non-white people, especially.
Thank you so much. We're going to get started with the reading.
Simple Sabotage Field Manual, Strategic Services Provisional. Strategic Services Field Manual number 3. Office of Strategic Services, Washington, D.C., January 17, 1944. This Simple Sabotage Field Manual, Strategic Services Provisional, is published for the information and guidance of all concerned and will be used as the basic doctrine for strategic services training for this subject. The contents of this manual should be carefully controlled and should not be allowed to come into unauthorized hands. The instructions may be placed in separate pamphlets or leaflets according to categories of operations, but should be distributed with care and not broadly. They should be used as a basis of radio broadcasts only for local and special cases, and as directed by the theater commander. AR 380-5 pertaining to handling of secret documents will be complied within the handling of this manual. William J. Donovan. Contents. Number 1, Introduction, page 1. Number 2, Possible Effects, page 2. Number 3, Motivating the Saboteur, page 2. Number 4, Tools, Targets, and Timing, page 6. Number 5, Pacific Suggestions for Simple Sabotage, page 8. Introduction. The purpose of this paper is to characterize simple sabotage, to outline its possible effects, and to present suggestions for inciting and executing it. Sabotage varies from highly technical coup de main acts that require detailed planning and the use of specially trained operatives to innumerable simple acts which the ordinary individual citizen saboteur can perform. This paper is primarily concerned with the latter type. Simple sabotage does not require specially prepared tools or equipment. It is executed by an ordinary citizen who may or may not act individually and without the necessity for active connection with an organized group. And it is carried out in such a way as to involve a minimum danger of injury, detection, and reprisal. Where destruction is involved, the weapons of the citizen saboteur are salt, nails, candles, pebbles, thread, or any other materials he might normally be expected to possess as a householder or as a worker in his particular occupation. His arsenal is the kitchen shelf, the trash pile, his own usual kit of tools and supplies, The targets of his sabotage are usually objects to which he has normal and inconspicuous access in everyday life. A second type of simple sabotage requires no destructive tools whatsoever and produces physical damage, if any, by highly indirect means. It is based on universal opportunities to make faulty decisions, to adopt a non cooperative attitude, and to induce others to follow suit. Making a faulty decision may be simply a matter of placing tools in one spot instead of another. A non cooperative attitude may involve nothing more than creating an unpleasant situation among one's fellow workers, engaging in bickerings or displaying surliness and stupidity. This type of activity, sometimes referred to as the human element, is frequently responsible for accidents, delays, and general obstruction, even under normal conditions. The potential saboteur should discover what types of faulty decisions and non-cooperation are normally found in his kind of work and should then devise his sabotage so as to enlarge that margin of error.
2. Possible effects. Acts of simple sabotage are occurring throughout Europe. An effort should be made to add to their efficiency, lessen their detectability, and increase their number. Acts of simple sabotage, multiplied by thousands of citizen saboteurs, can be an effective weapon against the enemy. Slashing tires, draining fuel tanks, starting fires, starting arguments, acting stupidly, short-circuiting electric systems, abrading machine parts will waste materials, manpower, and time. Occurring on a wide scale, simple sabotage will be a constant and tangible drag on the war effort of the enemy. Simple sabotage may also have secondary results of more or less value. Widespread practice of simple sabotage will harass and demoralize enemy administrators and police. Further success may embolden the citizen saboteur eventually to find colleagues who can assist him in sabotage of greater dimensions. Finally, the very practice of simple sabotage by natives in enemy or occupied territory may make these individuals identify themselves actively with the United Nations war effort and encourage them to assist openly in periods of Allied invasion and occupation.
3. Motivating the saboteur. To incite the citizen to the active practice of simple sabotage and to keep him practicing that sabotage over sustained periods is a special problem. Simple sabotage is often an act which the citizen performs according to his own initiative and inclination. Acts of destruction do not bring him any personal gain and may be completely foreign to his habitually conservationist attitude toward materials and tools. Purposeful stupidity is contrary to human nature. He frequently needs pressure, stimulation, or assurance, and information and suggestions regarding feasible methods of simple sabotage. Personal motives. The ordinary citizen very probably has no immediate personal motive for committing simple sabotage. Instead, he must be made to anticipate indirect personal gain, such as might come with enemy evacuation or destruction of the ruling government group. Gains should be stated as specifically as possible for the area addressed. Simple sabotage will hasten the day when Commissioner X and his deputies Y and Z will be thrown out, when particularly obnoxious decrees and restrictions will be abolished, when food will arrive, and so on. Abstract verbalizations about personal liberty, freedom of the press, and so on will not be convincing in most parts of the world. In many areas, they will not even be comprehensible. Since the effect of his own acts is limited, the saboteur may become discouraged unless he feels that he is a member of a large, though unseen, group of saboteurs operating against the enemy or the government of his own country and elsewhere. This can be conveyed indirectly. Suggestions which he reads and hears can include observations that a particular technique has been successful in this or that district. Even if the technique is not applicable to his surroundings, another success will encourage him to attempt similar acts. It also can be conveyed directly. Statements praising the effectiveness of the simple sabotage can be contrived, which will be published by white radio, freedom stations, and the subversive press. Estimates of the proportion of the population engaged in sabotage can be disseminated. Instances of successful sabotage already are being broadcast by white radio and freedom stations, and this should be continued and expanded where compatible with security. More important than A or B would be to create a situation in which the citizen saboteur acquires a sense of responsibility and begins to educate others in simple sabotage. 2. Encouraging destructiveness. It should be pointed out to the saboteur, where the circumstances are suitable, that he is acting in self-defense against the enemy or retaliating against the enemy for other acts of destruction. A reasonable amount of humor in the presentation of suggestions for simple sabotage will relax tensions of fear. The saboteur may have to reverse his thinking, and he should be told this in so many words. Where he formerly thought of keeping his tools sharp, he should now let them grow dull. Surfaces that formerly were lubricated now should be sanded. Normally diligent, he should now be lazy and careless, and so on. Once he is encouraged to think backwards about himself and the objects of his everyday life, the saboteur will see many opportunities in his immediate environment which cannot possibly be seen from a distance. A state of mind should be encouraged that anything can be sabotaged. Among the potential citizen saboteurs who are to engage in physical destruction, 2 extreme types may be distinguished. On the one hand, there is the man who is not technically trained and employed. This man needs specific suggestions as to what he can and should destroy, as well as details regarding the tools by means of which destruction is accomplished. At the other extreme is the man who is a technician, such as a lathe operator or an automobile mechanic. Presumably, this man would be able to devise methods of simple sabotage which would be appropriate to his own facilities. However, this man needs to be stimulated to reorient his thinking in the direction of destruction. Specific examples which need not be from his own field should accomplish this. Various media may be used to disseminate suggestions and information regarding simple sabotage. Among the media which may be used as the immediate situation dictates are freedom stations or radio, false or misleading broadcasts or leaflets may be directed toward specific geographic or occupational areas, or they may be general in scope. Finally, agents may be trained in the art of simple sabotage in anticipation of a time when they may be able to communicate this information directly. Safety measures. The amount of activity carried on by the saboteur will be governed not only by the number of opportunities he sees, but also by the amount of danger he feels. Bad news travels fast, and the simple sabotage may be discouraged if too many simple saboteurs are arrested. It should not be difficult to prepare leaflets and other media for the sabotage about the choice of weapons, time, and targets which will ensure the saboteur against detection and retaliation. Among such suggestions might be the following: use the materials which appear to be innocent. A knife or a nail file can be carried normally on your person. Either is a multi-purpose instrument for creating damage. Matches, pebbles, hair, salt, nails, and dozens of other destructive agents can be carried or kept in your living quarters without exciting any suspicion whatever. If you are working in a particular trade or industry, you can easily carry and keep such things as wrenches, hammers, emery paper, and the like. Try to commit acts for which large numbers of people could be responsible. For instance, if you blow out the wiring in a factory at a central firebox, almost anyone could have done it. On the street sabotage after dark, such as you might be able to carry out against a military car or truck, is another example of an act for which it would be impossible to blame you. Do not be afraid to commit acts for which you might be blamed directly, so long as you do so really and as long as you have a plausible excuse. You dropped your wrench across an electric circuit because an air raid has kept you up the night before and you were half dozing at work. Always be profuse in your apologies. Frequently, you can get away with such acts under the cover of pretending stupidity, ignorance, or overcaution, fear of being suspected of sabotage, or weakness and dullness due to undernourishment. After you've committed an act of easy sabotage, resist any temptation to wait around and see what happens. Loiterers arouse suspicion. Of course, there are circumstances when it would be suspicious for you to leave. If you commit sabotage on your job, you should naturally stay at your work.
4. Tools, targets, and timing. A. The citizen saboteur cannot be closely controlled, nor is it reasonable to expect that simple sabotage can be precisely concentrated on specific types of target according to the requirements of a concrete military situation. At attempts to control simple sabotage according to developing military factors, moreover, might provide the enemy with intelligence of more or less value in anticipating the date and area of notably intensified or notably slackened military activity. B. Sabotage suggestions, of course, should be adapted to fit the area where they are to be practiced. Target priorities for general types of situations likewise can be specified for emphasis at the proper time by the underground press, freedom stations, and cooperating propaganda. 1. Under general conditions, A. Simple sabotage is more than a malicious mischief, and it should always consist of acts whose results will be detrimental to the materials and manpower of the enemy. B. The saboteur should be ingenious in using his everyday equipment. All sorts of weapons will present themselves if he looks at his surroundings in a different light. For example, emery dust, a powerful weapon, may at first seem unattainable, but if the saboteur were to pulverize an emery knife, sharpener, or emery wheel with a hammer, he would find himself with a plentiful supply. C. The saboteur should never attack targets beyond his capacity or the capacity of his instruments. An inexperienced person should not, for example, attempt to use explosives, but should confine himself to the use of matches or familiar weapons. D. The saboteur should try to damage only objects and materials known to be in use by the enemy or to be destined for early use by the enemy. It will be safe for him to assume that almost any product of heavy industry is destined for enemy use, and that the most efficient fuel and lubricants also are destined for enemy use. Without special knowledge, however, it would be undesirable for him to attempt destruction of food crops or food products. E. Although the citizen saboteur may rarely have access to military objects, he should give these preference above all others. 2. prior to a military offensive, during periods which are quiescent in military sense, such emphasis as can be given to simple sabotage might well center on industrial production to lessen the flow of materials and equipment to the enemy. Slashing a rubber tire on an army truck may be an act of value. Spoiling a batch of rubber in the production plant is an act of still more value. 3. During a military offensive, a most significant sabotage for an area which is or is soon destined to be a theater of combat operation is that whose effects will be direct and immediate. Even if the effects are relatively minor and localized, this type of sabotage is to be preferred to activities whose effects, while widespread, are indirect and delayed. 1. The saboteur should be encouraged to attack transportation facilities of all kinds. Among such facilities are roads, railroads, automobiles, trucks, motorcycles, bicycles, trains, and trams. 2. Any communication facilities which can be used by the authorities to transmit instructions or moral material should be the objects of simple sabotage. These include telephone, telegraph, and power systems, radio newspapers, placards, and public notices. 3. Critical materials, valuable in themselves, are necessary to the efficient functioning of transportation and communication, also should become targets for the citizen saboteur. These may include oil, gasoline, tires, food, and water. 5 specific suggestions for simple sabotage. A. It would not be possible to evaluate the desirability of simple sabotage in an area without having in mind rather specifically what individual acts and results are embraced by the definition of simple sabotage. B. A listing of specific acts follows, classified according to the types of target. This list is presented as a growing rather than a complete outline of the methods of simple sabotage. As new techniques are developed or new fields explored, it will be elaborated and expanded. 1. Buildings. Warehouses, barracks, offices, hotels, and factory buildings are outstanding targets for simple sabotage. They are extremely susceptible to damage, especially by fire. They offer opportunities to such untrained people as janitors, chairwomen, and casual visitors, and when damaged, they present a relatively large handicap to the enemy. A. Fires can be started wherever there is an accumulation of inflammable material. Warehouses are obviously the most promising targets, but incendiary sabotage need not be confined to them alone. 1. Whenever possible, arrange to have the fire start after you have gone away. Use a candle and paper combination, setting it as close as possible to the inflammable material you want to burn. From a sheet of paper, tear a strip 3 or 4 centimeters wide and wrap it around the base of the candle 2 or 3 times. Twist more sheets of paper into loose ropes and place them around the base of the candle. When the candle flame reaches the encircling strip, it will be ignited and in turn will ignite the surrounding paper. The size, heat, and duration of the resulting flame will depend on how much paper you use and how much of it you can cramp in a small place. 2. With a flame of this kind, do not attempt to ignite any but rather inflammable materials such as cotton sacking. To light more resistant materials, use a candle plus tightly rolled or twisted paper which has been soaked in gasoline. To create a briefer but even hotter flame, put celluloid, such as you might find in an old comb, into the nest of plain or saturated paper, which is to be fired by a candle. 3. To make another type of simple fuse, soak one end of a piece of string in grease. Rub a generous pinch of gunpowder over the inch of string where greasy string meets clean string. Then ignite the clean end of the string. It will burn slowly without a flame, in much the same way a cigarette burns. Until it reaches the grease and gunpowder, it will then flare up suddenly. The grease-treated string will then burn with a flame. The same effect may be achieved by using matches instead of the grease and gunpowder. Run the string over the match heads, taking care that the string is not pressed or knotted. They too will produce a sudden flame. The advantage of this type of fuse is that string burns at a set speed. You can time your fire by the length and thickness of the string you choose. 4. Use a fuse such as the one suggested above to start a fire in an office after hours. The destruction of records and other types of documents would be a serious handicap to the enemy. 5. In basements where waste is kept, janitors should accumulate oily and greasy waste. Such waste sometimes ignites spontaneously, but it can easily be lit with a cigarette or a match. If you are a janitor on night duty, you can be the first to report the fire, but don't report it too soon. 6. A clean factory is not susceptible to fire, but a dirty one is. Workers should be careless with refuse, and janitors should be inefficient in cleaning. If dirt and trash can be accumulated, an otherwise fireproof building will become inflammable. 7. Where illuminating gas is used in a room which is vacant at night, shut the windows tightly, turn on the gas, and leave a candle burning in the room, closing the door tightly behind you. After a time, the gas will explode and a fire may or may not follow. B. Water and miscellaneous. Ruin warehouse stock by setting the automatic sprinkler system to work. You can do this by tapping the sprinkler heads sharply with a hammer or by holding a match under them. 2. Forget to provide paper in toilets. Put tightly rolled paper, hair, and other obstructions in the WC. Saturate a sponge with a thick starch or sugar solution. Squeeze it tightly into a ball, or wrap it with string and dry. Remove the string when fully dry. The sponge will be in the form of a tight hard ball. Flush down a waste control or otherwise introduce into a sewer line. The sponge will gradually expand to its normal size and plug the sewage system. 3. Put a coin beneath a bulb in a public building during the daytime so that the fuses will blow out when the lights are turned on at night. The fuses themselves may be rendered ineffective by putting a coin behind them or loading them with heavy wire. Then a short circuit may occur. Then a short circuit may either start a fire, damage transformers, or blow out a central fuse, which will interrupt distribution of electricity to a large area. 4. Jam paper, bits of wood, hairpins, and anything else that will fit into locks of all unguarded entrances to public buildings. 2. Industrial production, manufacturing. A. Tools. 1. Let cutting tools grow dull. They will be inefficient, will slow down production, and may damage the materials and parts you use them on. 2. Leave saws slightly twisted when you are not using them. After a while, they will break when used. 3. Using a very rapid stroke will wear out a file before its time. So will dragging a file in slow strokes under heavy pressure. Exert pressure on the backward stroke as well as the forward stroke. 4. Clean files by knocking them against the vise or the workplace. They are easily broken this way. 5. Bits and drills will snap under heavy pressure. 6. You can put a press punch out of order by putting in it more material than it is adjusted for. 2 blanks instead of 1, for example. 7. Power-driven tools like pneumatic drills, riveters, and so on are never efficient when dirty. Lubrication points and electric contacts can easily be fouled by normal accumulations of dirt or the insertion of foreign matter. B. Oil and lubrication systems are not only vulnerable to easy sabotage, but are critical in every machine with moving parts. Sabotage of oil and lubrication will slow down production or stop entirely at strategic points in industrial processes. 1. Put metal dust or filings, fine sand, ground glass, emery dust. Get it by pounding up an emery knife sharpener and similar hard, gritty substances directly into lubrication systems. They will scour smooth surfaces, ruining pistons, cylinder walls, shafts, and bearings. They will overheat and stop motors, which will need overhauling, new parts, and extensive repairs. Such materials, if they are used, should be introduced into lubrication systems, past any filters which otherwise would strain them out. 2. You can wear on any machine by uncovering a filter system, poking a pencil or any sharp object through the filter mesh, then covering it up again, or if you can dispose of it quickly, simply remove the filter. 3. If you cannot get at the lubrication system or filter directly, you may be able to lessen the effectiveness of the oil by diluting it in storage. In this case, almost any liquid will do, which will thin the oil. A small amount of sulfuric acid, varnish, water glass, or linseed oil will be especially effective. 4. Using a thin oil where a heavy oil is prescribed will break down a machine or heat up a moving shaft so that it will freeze and stop. 5. Put any clogging substance into lubrication systems or if it will float into stored oil. Twisted combings of hair, pieces of string, dead insects, and many other common objects will be effective in stopping or hindering the flow of oil through feed lines and filters. 6. Under some circumstances, you may be able to destroy oil outright rather than interfere with its effectiveness by removing stop plugs from lubricating systems or by puncturing the drums and cans in which it is stored. C. Cooling systems. 1. A water cooling system can be put out of commission in a fairly short time with considerable damage to an engine or motor if you can put into it several pinches of hard grain such as rice or wheat. They will swell up and choke the circulation of the water, and the cooling system will have to be torn down to remove the obstruction. Sawdust or hair may also be used to clog a water cooling system. 2. If very cold water is quickly introduced into the cooling system of an overheated motor, contraction and considerable strain on the engine housing will result. If you can repeat the treatment a few times, cracking and serious damage will occur. 3. You can ruin the effectiveness of an air cooling system by plugging dirt and waste into intake or exhaust valves. If a belt-run fan is used in the system, make a jagged cut at least halfway through the belt. It will slip and finally part under strain and the motor will overheat. D. Gasoline and oil fuel. Tanks and fueling engines usually are accessible and easy to open. They afford a very vulnerable target for simple sabotage activities. 1. Put several pinches of sawdust or hard grains such as rice or wheat into the fuel tank of a gasoline engine. The particles will choke a feed line so that the engine will stop. Sometime will be required to discover the source of the problem, although they will be hard to get. The crumbs of natural rubber, such as you might find in old rubber bands and pencil erasers, are also effective. 2. If you can accumulate sugar, put it in the fuel tank of a gasoline engine. As it burns together with gasoline, it will turn into a sticky mess which will completely mire the engine and necessitate extensive cleaning and repair. Honey and molasses are as good as sugar. Try to use about 75 to 100 grams for each 10 gallons of gasoline. 3. Other impurities which you can introduce into gasoline will cause rapid engine wear and eventual breakdown. Fine particles of pumice, sand, ground glass, and metal dust can easily be introduced into a gasoline tank. Be sure that the particles are very fine so that they will be able to pass through the carburetor jet. 4. Water, urine, wine, or any simple liquid you can get in reasonably large quantities will dilute the gasoline fuel to a point where no combustion will occur in the cylinder and the engine will not move. 1 pint to 20 gallons of gasoline is efficient. If salt water is used, it will cause corrosion and permanent motor damage. 5. In the case of diesel engines, put low flash point oil into the fuel tank. The engine will not move. If there already is proper oil in the tank when the wrong kind is added, the engine will only limp and sputter along. 6. Fuel lines to gasoline and oil engines frequently pass over the exhaust pipe. When the machine is at rest, you can stab a small hole in the fuel line and plug the hole with wax. As the engine runs and the exhaust tubes becomes hot, the wax will be melted. Fuel will drip onto the exhaust and a blaze will start. 7. If you have access to a room where gasoline is stored, remember that gas vapors accumulating in a closed room will explode after a time if you leave a candle burning in the room. A good deal of evaporation, however, must occur from the gas tins into the air of the room. If removal of the top of the tins does not expose enough gasoline to the air to ensure copious evaporation, you can open lightly constructed tins further with a knife, ice pick, or sharpened nail file, or puncture a tiny hole in the tank which will permit gasoline to leak out on the floor. This will greatly increase the rate of evaporation. Before you light your candle, be sure that windows are closed and the room is as airtight as you can make it. If you can see that windows in a neighboring room are open wide, you have a chance of setting a large fire, which you will not only destroy the gasoline, but anything else nearby. When the gasoline explodes, the doors of the storage room will be blown open. A draft to the neighboring windows will be created, which will whip up a fine conflagration. E. Electric motors. Electric motors, including dynamos, are more restricted than the targets so far discussed. They cannot be sabotaged easily or without risk of injury by unskilled persons who may otherwise have good opportunities for destruction. 1. Set the rheostat to a high point of resistance in all types of electric motors. They will overheat and catch fire. 2. Adjust the overload relay to a very high value beyond the capacity of the motor. Then overload the motor to a point where it will overheat and break down. 3. Remember that dust, dirt, and moisture are enemies of electrical equipment. Spill dust and dirt onto the points where the wires and electric motors connect with terminals and onto insulating parts. Insufficient transmission of current and in some cases short circuit will occur. What generator motors to produce short circuits? 4. Accidentally bruise the insulation on wire, loosen nuts on connections, make faulty splices and faulty connections and wiring to waste electrical current and reduce the power of electrical motors. 5. Damage to commutators can reduce the power output or cause short-circuiting in direct current motors. Loosen or remove commutator holding rings. Sprinkle carbon, graphite, or metal dust on commutators. Put a little grease or oil at the contact point of commutators where commutators bars are close together. Bridge the gaps between them with metal dust or sawdust, their edges with a chisel so that the teeth on adjoining bars meet or nearly meet, and current can pass from one to the other. 6. Put a piece of finely grained emery paper half the size of a postage stamp in a place where it will wear away rotating brushes. The emery paper and the motor will be destroyed in the resulting fire. 7. Sprinkle carbon, graphite, or metal dust on slip rings so that the current will leak or short circuits will occur. When a motor is idle, nick the slip rings with a chisel. 8. Cause motor stoppage or inefficiency by applying dust mixed with grease to the face of the armature so that it will not make proper contact. 9. To overheat electric motors, mix sand with heavy grease and smear it between the stator and rotor, or wedge thin metal pieces between them to prevent the efficient generation of current. Put floor sweepings, oil, tar, or paint between them. 10. In motors using three-phase current, deeply nick one of the lead and wires with a knife or file when the machine is at rest, or replace one of the three fuses with a blown out fuse. In the first case, the motor will stop after running a while, and in the second, it will not start. F. Transformers. 1. Transformers of the oiled field type can be put out of commission if you pour water, salt water, or kerosene into the oil tank. 2. In air-cooled transformers, block the ventilation by piling debris around the transformer. 3. In all types of transformers, throw carbon, graphite, or metal dust over the outside bushings and other exposed electrical parts.
G. Turbines, for the most part, are heavily built, stoutly housed, and difficult of access. Their vulnerability to simple sabotage is very low. 1. After inspecting or repairing a hydro turbine, fasten the cover insecurely so that it will blow off and flood the plant with water. A loose cover on a steam turbine will cause it to leak and slow down. 2. In water turbines, insert a large piece of scrap iron in the head of the penstock just beyond the screening, so that water will carry the damaging materials down to the plant equipment. When the steam line to a turbine is open for repair, put pieces of scrap iron into it, to be blasted into the turbine machinery when steam is up again. 4. Create a leak in the line feeding oil to the turbine, so that oil will fall on the hot steam pipe and cause a fire. H. Boilers. 1. Reduce the efficiency of steam boilers any way you can. Put too much water in them to make them slow starting, or keep the fire under them low to keep them inefficient. Let them dry and turn the fire up. They will crack and be ruined. An especially good trick is to keep putting limestone or water containing lime in the boiler. It will deposit lime on the bottom of the sides. This deposit will provide very good insulation against heat. After enough of it has collected, the boiler will be completely worthless. 3. Production metals. A. Iron and steel. 1. Keep blast furnaces in a condition where they must be frequently shut down for repair. In making fire-proof bricks for the inner lining of blast furnaces, put in an extra proportion of tar so that they will wear out quickly and necessitate constant relining. 2. Make cores for casting so that they are filled with air bubbles and an imperfect cast result. 3. See that the core in a mold is not properly supported so that the core gives way or the casting is spoiled because of the incorrect position of the core. 4. In tempering steel or iron, apply too much heat so that the resulting bars and ingots are of poor quality. B. Other metals, no suggestions available. 4. Production, mining and mineral extraction. A. Coal. A slight blow against your Davy oil lamp will extinguish it. And to light it again, you will have to find a place where there is no fire damp. Take a long time looking for the place. 2. Blacksmiths who make pneumatic picks should not harden them properly so that they will quickly grow dull. 3. You can easily put your pneumatic pick out of order. Pour a small amount of water through the oil lever and your pick will stop working. Coal dust and improper lubrication will also put it out of order. 4. Weaken the chain that pulls the bucket conveyors carrying coal. A deep dent in the chain made with blows of a pick or a shovel will cause it to part under normal strain. Once a chain breaks, normally or otherwise, take your time about reporting the damage. Be slow about taking the chain up for repairs and bringing it back down after repairs. 5. Derail mine cars by putting obstructions on the rails and in switch points. If possible, pick a gallery where coal cars have to pass each other so that traffic will be snarled up. 6. Send up quantities of rock and other useless materials with the coal. Wow. 5. Production, agriculture. A. Machinery. 1. C part 5B, 2C, D, and E. B. Crops and livestock probably will be destroyed only in areas where there are large food surpluses or the enemy regime is known to be requisitioning food. Feed crops to livestock. Let crops harvest too early or too late. Spoil stores of grain, fruit, and vegetables by soaking them in water so that they will rot. Spoil fruit and vegetables by leaving them in the sun. 6. Transportation, railways. A. Passengers. 1. Make train travel as inconvenient as possible for enemy personnel. Make mistakes in issuing train tickets, leaving portions of the journey uncovered by the ticket book. Issue 2 tickets for the same seat in the train so that an interesting argument will result. Near train time, instead of issuing printed tickets, write them out slowly by hand, prolonging the process until the train is nearly ready to leave or has left the station. On station bulletin boards announcing train arrivals and departures, see that false and misleading information is given about the trains bound for enemy destinations. 2. In trains bound for enemy destinations, attendants should make life as uncomfortable as possible for passengers. See that the food is especially bad, take up tickets after midnight, call all station stops very loudly during the night, handle baggage as noisily as possible during the night, and so on. 3. See that the luggage of enemy personnel is mislaid or unloaded at the wrong stations. Switch address labels on enemy baggage. 4. Engineers should see that trains run slow or make unscheduled stops for plausible reasons. B. Switches, signals, and routing. 1. Exchange wires and switchboards containing signals and switches so that they connect to the wrong terminals. 2. Loosen push rods so that signal arms do not work. Break signal lights. Exchange the colored lenses on red and green lights. Wow. 3. Spread and spike switch points in the track so that they will not move, or place rocks or close packed dirt between the switch points. 4. Sprinkle rock salt or ordinary salt profusely over the electrical connections of switch points and on the ground nearby. When it rains, the switch will be short-circuited. 5. See that cars are put on the wrong trains. Remove the labels from cars needing repair and put them on cars in good order. Leave couplings between cars as loose as possible. C. Roadbeds and open track. On a curve, take the bolts out of the tie plates connecting to the sections of the outside rail and scoop away the gravel, cinders, or dirt for a few feet on each side of the connecting joint. 2. If by disconnecting the tie plate at a joint and loosening sleeper nails on each side of the joint, it becomes possible to move a section of rail. Spread 2 sections of rail and drive a spike vertically between them. D, oil and lubrication. C, 5B, 2B. 2, squeeze lubricating pipes with pincers or dent them with hammers so that the flow of oil is obstructed. I'm going to move to H, boilers. 2, after inspection, put heavy oil or tar in the engine's boilers or put half a kilogram of soft soap into the water in the tender. I, brakes and miscellaneous. Engines should run at high speeds and use brakes excessively at curves and on downhill grades. 2, punch holes in air brake valves or water supply pipes. 3, in the last car of a passenger train or a front car of a freight train, remove the wadding from a journal box and replace it with oily rags. 7, transportation, automotive. A, roads. Damage to roads, 3 below, is slow and therefore impractical as a D-Day or near D-Day activity. 1, change signposts at intersections and forks. The enemy will go the wrong way and it may be miles before he discovers his mistakes. An area where traffic is composed primarily of enemy autos, trucks, and motor convoys of various kinds, remove danger signals from curves and intersections. 2, when the enemy asks for directions, give him the wrong information. Especially when enemy convoys are in the neighborhood, truck drivers can spread rumors and give false information about bridges being out, ferries closed, and detours lying ahead. 3, if you can start damage to a heavily traveled road, passing traffic and the elements will do the rest. Construction gangs can see that too much sand or water is put in concrete or that the road foundation has soft spots. Anyone can scoop ruts in asphalt and macadam roads, which turn soft in hot weather. Passing trucks will accentuate the ruts to a point where substantial repair will be needed. Dirt roads also can be scooped out. If you are a road laborer, it will only be a few minutes work to divert a small stream from a sluice so that it runs over and eats away the road. 4, distribute broken glass, nails, and sharp rocks on roads to puncture tires. B, passengers. Bus driver can go past the stop where the enemy wants to get off. Taxi drivers can waste the enemy's time and make extra money by driving the longest possible route to his destination. C, oil and lubrication. 2, disconnect the oil pump. This will burn out the main bearings in less than 50 miles of normal driving. And then I'm going to go to F. Battery and ignition. Jam bits of wood into the ignition lock. Loosen or exchange connections behind the switchboard. Put dirt in spark plugs. Damage distributor points. 2, turn on the lights in parked cars so that the battery will run down. 3, mechanics can ruin batteries in a number of undetectable ways. Take the valve cap off a cell and drive a screwdriver slantwise into the exposed water vent, shattering the plates of the cell. No damage will show when you put the cap back on. Iron or copper fillings put into the cells, i.e., dropped into the acid will greatly shorten its life. Copper coins or a few pieces of iron will accomplish the same and more slowly. 100 to 150 cubic centimeters of vinegar in each cell greatly reduces the life of the battery, but the odor of the vinegar may reveal what has happened. G. Gears. 1. Remove the lubricant from or put too light a lubricant in the transmission and other gears. 2. In trucks, tractors, and other machines with heavy gears, fix the gear case insecurely, putting bolts in only half the bolt holes. The gears will be badly jolted in use and will soon need repairs. H. Tires. 1. Slash or puncture tires of unguarded vehicles. Put a nail inside a matchbox or other small box and set it vertical in front of the back tire of a stationary car. When the car starts off, the nail will go neatly through the tire. 2. It is easy to damage a tire in a tire repair shop. In fixing flats, spill gas, benzene, caustic soda, or other material inside the casing, which will puncture or corrode the tube. If you put a gummy substance inside the tube, the next flat will stick the tube to the casing and make it unusable. Or when you fix a flat tire, you can simply leave between the tube and the casing the object which caused the flat in the first place. 3. In assembling a tire after repair, pump the tube up as fast as you can. Instead of filling out smoothly, it may crease, in which case it will wear out quickly. Or as you put a tire together, see if you can pinch the tube between the rim of the tire and the rim of the wheel, so that a blowout will result. 4. In putting air into tires, see that they are kept below normal pressure, so that more than an ordinary amount of wear will result. In filling tires on double wheels, inflate the inner tire to a much higher pressure than the outer one. Both will wear out more quickly this way. Badly aligned wheels also wear tires out quickly. You can leave wheels out of alignment when they come in for adjustment, or you can spring them out of true with a strong kick, or by driving the car slowly and diagonally into a curb. If you have access to stocks of tires, you can rot them by spilling oil, gasoline, caustic acid, or benzene on them. Synthetic rubber, however, is less susceptible to these chemicals. 8. Transportation, water. A. Navigation. Barge and river boat personnel should spread false rumors about the navigability and conditions of the waterways they travel. Tell other barge and boat captains to follow channels that will take extra time or cause them to make canal detours. 2. Barge and river boat captains should navigate with exceeding caution near locks and bridges to waste their time and to waste time of other craft which may have to wait on them. If you don't pump the bilges of ships and barges often enough, they will be slower and harder to navigate. Barges accidentally run aground are an efficient time waster too. Attendance on swing, draw, or bascule bridges can delay traffic over the bridge or in the waterway underneath by being slow. Boat captains can leave unattended drawbridges open in order to hold up road traffic. 4. Add or subtract compensating magnets to the compass on cargo ships. Demagnetize the compass or maladjust it by concealing a large bar of steel or iron near to it. B. Cargo. 1. While loading or unloading, handle cargo carelessly in order to cause damage. Arrange the cargo so that the weakest and lightest crates and boxes will be at the bottom of the hold, while the heaviest ones are on the top of them. Put hatch covers and tarpaulins on sloppily so that rain and deck wash will injure the cargo. Tie float valves open so that storage tanks will overflow on perishable goods. 9. Communications. A. Telephone. 1. At office, hotel, and exchange switchboards, delay putting enemy calls through. Give them wrong numbers. Cut them off accidentally, or forget to disconnect them so that the line cannot be used again. 2. Hamper official and especially military business by making at least one telephone call a day to an enemy headquarters, When you get them, tell them you have the wrong number. Call military or police offices and make anonymous false reports of fires, air raids, bombs. 3. In offices and buildings used by the enemy, unscrew the earphone of telephone receivers and remove the diaphragm. Electricians and telephone repairmen can make poor connections and damage insulation so that crosstalk and other kinds of electrical interference will make conversations hard or impossible to understand. Put the batteries under automatic switchboards, out of commission by dropping nails, metal filings, or coins into the cells. If you can treat half the batteries in this way, the switchboard will stop working. A whole telephone system can be disrupted if you can put 10% of the cells in half the batteries of the central battery room out of order. B, telegraph. 1. Delay the transmission and delivery of telegrams to enemy destinations. 2. Garble telegrams to enemy destinations so that another telegram will have to be sent or a long distance call will have to be made. Sometimes it will be possible to do this by changing a single letter in a word. For example, changing minimum to miximum so that the person receiving the telegram will not know whether minimum or maximum is meant. C. Transportation lines. 1. Cut telephone and telegraph transmission lines. Damage insulation on power lines to cause interference. D. Mail. 1. Post office employees can see to it that enemy mail is always delayed by 1 day or more, that it is put in the wrong sacks, and so on. E. Motion pictures. 1. Projector operators can run newsreels and other enemy propaganda films by bad focusing, speeding up or slowing down the film, and by causing frequent breakage in the film. I'll pass it to Sir. This is his industry.
Are you there?
Is it my turn?
Yeah, so we're on page 30.
Yeah, audience can ruin enemy propaganda. Is that where we're at?
Mm-hmm.
Audience can ruin enemy propaganda film by applauding to drown the words of the speaker, by coughing loudly, and by talking. Anyone can break up a showing of an enemy propaganda film by putting 2 or 3 dozen large moth in a paper bag. Take the bag to the movies with you, put it on the floor in an empty section of the theater as you go in, and leave it open. The moth will fly out and climb into the projector beam so that the film will be obscured by fluttering shadows. F. Radio. 1. Station engineers will
Sir, we can't hear you anymore.
radio station. Engineers will find it quite easy to overmodulate transmissions of talks by persons giving enemy propaganda or instructions so that they will sound as if they were talking through a heavy cotton blanket with a mouth full of marbles. In your own apartment building, you can
Can't hear you again.
I don't know why that keeps happening. In your own apartment building, you can interfere with radio reception at times when the enemy wants everybody to listen. Take an electric light plug off the end of an electric light cord. Take some wire out of the cord and tie it across 2 terminals of 2-prong plug or 3 terminals of 4-prong plug. Then take it around and put it into as many wall and floor outlets as you can find. Each time you insert the plug into a new circuit, you will blow out a fuse and silence all radios running on power from that circuit until a new fuse is put in. 3. Damaging insulation on any electrical equipment tends to create radio interference in the immediate neighborhood, particularly on large generators, neon signs, fluorescent lights, X-ray machines, and power lines. If workmen can damage insulation on a high tension line near an enemy airfield, they will make ground-to-plane radio communications difficult and perhaps impossible during long periods of the day. 10. Electric power. Turbines, electric motors, transformers. B. Transmission lines. Linesmen can loosen and dirty insulators to cause power leakage. It will be quite easy, too, for them to tie a piece of very heavy string several times back and forth between two parallel transmission lines, winding it several turns around the wire each time beforehand. The string should be heavily saturated with salt and then dried. When it rains, the string becomes a conductor and a short circuit will result. 11. General interference with organizations and production. A. Organizations and conferences. 1. Insist on doing everything through channels. Never permit shortcuts to be taken in order to expedite decisions. 2. Make speeches. Talk as frequently as possible and at great length. Illustrate your points by long anecdotes and accounts of personal experiences. Never hesitate to make the appropriate patriotic comments. 3. When possible, refer to all matters to communities as further study and consideration. Attempt to make the committees as large as possible, never less than 5. 4. Bring up irrelevant issues as frequently as possible. 5. Haggle over precise wording of communications, minutes, resolutions. 6. Refer back to matters decided upon the last meeting and attempt to reopen the question of an admissibility of that decision. 7. Advocate caution by reasonable and urge your fellow confreres to reasonable and avoid haste which might result in embarrassments or difficulties later on. 8. Be worried about the propriety of any decision. Raise the question of whether such action as contemplated lies within the jurisdiction of the group or whether it might conflict with the policy of some higher echelon. B. Managers and supervisors. Demand written orders. 2. Misunderstand orders. Ask endless questions or engage in long correspondence about such orders. Quibble over them when you can. 3. Do everything possible to delay the delivery of orders. Even though parts of an order may be ready beforehand, don't deliver it until it is completely ready. Don't order new working materials until your correct stocks have been virtually exhausted, so that the slightest delay in fulfilling your order will mean a shutdown. Order high quality materials which are hard to get. If you don't get them, argue about it. Warn that inferior materials will mean inferior work. In making work assignments, always sign out the unimportant jobs first. See that the important jobs are assigned to inefficient workers of poor machines. Insist on perfect work and relatively unimportant products. Send back for refinishing those which have the least flaw. Approve other defective parts whose flaws are not visible to the naked eye. Make mistakes in routing so that parts and materials will be sent to the wrong place in the plant. When training new workers, give incomplete or misleading instructions. To lower morale and with it, production, be pleasant to inefficient workers. Give them undeserved promotions. Discriminate against effective workers. Complain unjustly about their work. Hold conferences when there is critical work to be done. Multiply paperwork in plausible ways. Start duplicate files. Multiply the procedures and clearances involved in issuing instructions, paychecks, and so on. See that 3 people have to approve everything where 1 would do. Apply all regulations to the last letter. Office workers. make mistakes in quantities of materials, prolong correspondence with government bureaus, misfile essential documents, and making carbon copies. Make 1, 2 for you so that an extra copying job will have to be done. Tell important callers the boss is busy or talking on another phone. Hold up mail until the next collection. Spread disturbing rumors that sound like inside dope. Employees work slowly. Does anyone else want to read?
Yeah, I can go.
I can jump in. I haven't read.
Quickie was on the board.
Okay. Can you remind me where we are at?
The
Sorry.
employees.
We're on page 34, D, employees.
30. Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. Employees. 1, work slowly. Think out ways to increase the number of movements necessary on your job. Use a light hammer instead of a heavy one. Try to make a small wrench. Try to make a small wrench when a big one is necessary. Use little force where considerable force is needed, and so on. 2, contrive as many interruptions to your work as you can. When changing the material on which you are working, as you would on a lathe or punch, take needless time to do it. If you are cutting, shaping, or doing other measured work, measure dimensions twice as often as they need to. When you go to the laboratory, spend a longer time there than is necessary. Forget tools so that you will have to go back after them. 3, even after you understand the language, pretend to understand instructions in a foreign tongue. 4, pretend instructions are hard to understand and ask to have them repeated more than once. Or pretend that you are particularly anxious to do your work and pester the foreman with unnecessary questions. 5, do your work poorly and blame it on bad tools, machinery, or equipment. Complain that these things are preventing you from doing your job right. 6, never pass on your skill and experience to a new, less skillful worker. 7, snarl up administration in every possible way. Fill out forms illegibly so that they will have to be done over. Make mistakes or omit requested information in forms. 8, if possible, join or help organize a group for presenting employee problems to the management. See that the procedures adopted are inconvenient as possible for the management involving the presence of a large number of employees at each presentation, and telling more than one meeting for each grievance, bringing up problems which are largely imaginary, and so on. 9, misroute materials. 10, mix good parts with unusable scrap and rejected parts. 12, general devices for lowering morale and creating confusion. A, give sorry. A, give lengthy and incomprehensible explanations when questioned. B, report imaginary spy or danger to the Gestapo or police. C, act stupid. D, be as irritable and quarrelsome as possible without getting yourself into trouble. E, misunderstand all sorts of regulations concerning such matters as rationing, transportation, traffic regulations. F, complain against ersatz materials. G, in public, treat Axis nationals or Quislings coldly. H, stop all conversation when Axis nationals or Quislings enter a cafe. I, cry and sob hysterically at every occasion, especially when confronted by government clerks. J, boycott all movies, entertainments, concerts, newspapers, which are in any way connected with the Quisling authorities. D, do not cooperate in salvage schemes.
I looked it up. It says a quisling is A traitor who collaborates with an enemy force occupying their country.
Ooh, AKA a coon.
Well, to the white supremacists, we would be a quisling. So, yeah.
Wow. Did I just hear that right? Wow. Okay.
Wow, this was a great and disturbing example of how what a fellow attempted counter racist wrote to me, saying that an example of how they are effective and dangerous at practicing racism, white supremacy. And from this document, they seem to have all areas covered. Even the seas are covered in this document, sabotaging boats, and that's really, really telling of how the system of white supremacy is maintained and refined through simple sabotage.
Yeah, imagine too now with everything, like with the whole online and all of this surveillance, like it made me question everything that has happened in my life, like every inconvenience that I've experienced. I was like, this is very interesting. I imagine a lot of the things that happen online are definitely like orchestrated by like the CIA and stuff.
I thought it was very suspicious that when the radio part, we were reading that part, and then we started having technical difficulties. I thought that was very suspicious. Almost like the usual suspects messing with the broadcast, but I may be incorrect. But that was really interesting.
I thought that this was a very thorough manual. You know, they, like you said, they covered, you know, almost every area. I couldn't stop laughing. I know this is serious, but some of this, it was just funny because some of this stuff I think people do without even realizing it, as far as like the employment stuff.
Yeah, I thought that on page 32, 11, I thought that part was just so accurate when I was reading every single part. I was like, that is literally anytime you do any sort of like organizing work, there's always someone who, oh, we need to take our time. Let's like be cautious about this, or like just people going on tangents, people like filibustering, talking excessively. I just thought that was so interesting, and I agree quickly. I feel like people even do these things without even being aware of it. Like I don't even know if they're trying to sabotage, or if they're just have been somehow trained to do this type of stuff.
Has the system of racism and white supremacy trained suspected racists to be simple saboteurs just through like maybe the area of entertainment and just the all 9 areas they have been? Could it be that they have all been trained this sort of behavior? Is that why we're saying that they aren't aware of what they're doing?
Okay, for example, like we used to have meetings with, I'm just gonna say it, we used to have meetings with Jair. If you go to page 32, it says, you know, refer back to matters decided upon at the last meeting and attempt to reopen the question of the advisability of that decision. Be worried about the propriety of any decision. Raise the question of whether such actions are contemplated lies within the jurisdiction of the group. And then there's another part like, make speeches, talk as frequently as possible and at great length, illustrate your points by long anecdotes and accounts of personal experience. Never hesitate to make a few appropriate patriotic comments. I would say that when that person was in these meetings, that is something that happened frequently. I don't think that that person is like, working for the CIA. I just think that a lot of people don't really even know how to have constructive conversations in meetings. And so they're more like that's just sometimes how they converse. Like they just have to always bring up matters that are not even relevant or talk about the same thing over and over that puts people back into the cycle of having the same conversation for like 5 different meetings. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
Yeah, I totally understand, and I can totally see how the system has trained non-white people to function as simple saboteurs without them ever knowing. I totally see how they've um one of it is act stupid. That's in here. Jennifer for general devices for lowering morale and creating confusion, and that is literally in there. Be act stupid, and the one beneath that is be irritable and quarrelsome as possible without getting yourself in trouble. And that can just look like causing disruption or taking the conversation off topic, which is, has happened and does happen in many sort of discussions.
Act stupid. Act stupid seems to sum up the whole white fragility position that's being pushed.
yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
This book just reminded me that like white people, Uruguays and Europeans, especially the ones who classify themselves as white, they are very much on code 24/7, and this reminds me like just riding my bike throughout London. I'll stop somewhere and on the street to like adjust my bike, and then I'll get approached by a Urugu, and they'll ask me questions and expect me to answer things. And I remember one time where I suspect I was a victim of sabotagation or like a saboteur. So I'm in the grad program at the London Film School, and I left my laptop on the table during lunch, and the cafeteria is like full of white people and Asians and Indians. And basically, I leave my laptop on a table to go use the bathroom. I come back and my laptop is closed and the screen is like cracked. So I suspect like someone had slammed my laptop shut when I left. Because I was just sitting at the table eating food, watching Game of Thrones on my laptop. So I knew I would have noticed a crack on it. And I like couldn't really do anything about it. There's no cameras in the cafeteria. Even if there was, who's gonna check to see? Who's gonna really investigate that for me? But white people are on code, and before SWAT, 0526 mentioned that this was written by a racist suspect. I thought this was a a non-white person who wrote this, but I think a white male wrote this, and he wrote it for his brethren of racism, white supremacy, the ones who work with him, racist man, racist child, and racist woman. It takes the whole lot to maintain such an intricate system of domination. White people are all on code.
Someone correct me if I'm don't have an understanding of what we've read. This is a simple sabotage field manual produced most likely by either the American or the British military intelligence during the Second World War, produced in 1945 and released, declassified probably 20 years later. So sounds like something that they would have given members of the resistance in Europe to do sabotage against the German forces, for example. Is that correct?
Yeah. And that's why at the end they keep referencing Axis powers.
Right. And Quisling is the name of the people who cooperated with the Germans in Norway.
Yeah.
I think that, has anyone noticed the similarity between this book and the code book?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I definitely was going to bring that point up. Yeah, yeah.
I would imagine that Fuller has read a bunch of manuals like this during his military training, and that might have influenced the way he prepared the code book. Military writing, military documents like this for training assume a wide range of educational backgrounds, and they try to be as precise and as possible, and as they try to be as effective in their communication, because you don't know what level of education people have, and there's so much things to learn to be a good soldier. What I liked about the document was the comprehensive list of suggestions for how to sabotage. Like they have a good definition in the beginning. They explain what the effects are supposed to be, and then almost 80% of the book is just suggestions, so that someone who doesn't understand the definition or the theory can just simply go to a suggestion and pick something out. And the idea, one thing that they say is that they suggest you do not attempt to do any sabotage above your skill level or your above the materials you have. I thought that was very, very cool.
Yeah, I feel like I agree. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
I just wanted to ask a question. So Full never told y'all the story about when he started writing counter-racist code when he was in the military?
I remember the story.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I figured you would remember it. And because you made the connection between the material and the code book. Right.
Somebody tell the story.
Edward, you want to tell it?
No, I don't want to. I suggest you ask Fuller. But it might be different today than it is than when I heard it, 20 years ago. So
yeah, it can be found on many broadcasts, that story, for those who are interested.
The 10-second version is that he was in the Asian Pacific thinking about racism and not having many people around him, and he was in the military thinking about racism, sitting on an island, and came up with the idea that racism is a system.
He spoke also about one of his officers in the military. You can probably find that on one of the audios as well. The one who
make it very simple.
Yeah, the one who actually put him on to doing things very slowly, very clearly, and very methodically. That's a good story as well. Or you could just call him.
Thank you. Did I hear some?
Yes. So a lot of this got me thinking about some of these other organizations in which not only people are working with white people, and how they kind of employ some of these tactics, like Ash was mentioning earlier, like, we will do this. They say things like, oh, well, this the right way or the legal way. Just things that definitely take a long time to do, you know, kind of dragging their feet, not getting the processes done. So that's kind of what I was about, especially with the you know, the 11th section, and things like that. I think about like Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. Working with them, you know, not seeing justice being produced. Those are just some things that came to mind reading that section in particular.
Yeah, that section reminded me so much of whenever you try to get something done. Oh, sorry, Helen, I didn't see that your hand was raised. If you want to go next, that's fine.
No problem. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Piggybacking off of what was just said, it also reminds me of reparations, how when they talk about reparations and how it's been going on for like the longest time.
Mm.
Yeah, it's always like we're gonna make a committee to study this. And that was actually in the number 11. That part really was interesting to me because it's always like, we're not actually gonna provide reparations. We're just gonna make a committee to talk about it. And I just thought that was like, wow. So they've been doing this since probably long before the 40s, where it's like written here. That's crazy.
And then that reminds me of like, you know how Neely Fuller, you know, one of his things is like when you ask people if it exists and like no, so why are people talking about it then? Or were we like talking about it constantly? It's kind of like that, right? In the sense like of creating a committee to just talk about racism all day, every day, but not actually do anything about it. Yeah. You know, like people on CNN, I mean, they talk about racism all day long.
Yeah, but in a way that is ineffective and possibly causes more confusion to be spread. I thought this was a good example of how a lot of these techniques are probably occurring in the workplace, not training new employees properly. It reminds me of workplace racism. Promoting the unskilled, undeserving employees over the dedicated, hardworking employees is also a tactic that was mentioned in this document. And I'm wondering, like, what is the result for this document being released to the public of racist suspects? And was this like an attempt to refine the suspected races of the globe? Definitely something that I'm thinking about, the purpose of this document being released, because it's just very telling of how the system is practiced.
Yeah. Hello?
You can be heard.
Yeah, I was going to say it does make me question a lot what's happened to me at work, actually. And a lot of whilst I was listening to it, it did make me think of a lot of the workplace racism stuff that I've heard on the cows, actually. And one part in particular where it said, never pass on skills to a less skillful worker. That's happened quite a few times to me and quite a few other non-white people that I know. This just reading through a lot of this and listening to a lot of it, it really does strike me just how similar is a complete opposite to Neely Fuller's code book. It's really interesting, and just how, if I can use that word, just how dastardly white supremacists go about the practice of racism, white supremacy. And it was interesting also where it said about the individual person is what is it? Let me see what it said. The document suggests individuals being independent but working to achieve the same goal, therefore united, right? And I think maybe we can learn a lot from this code book and Neely Fuller's code book, if you know what I mean. I think in terms of doing what they call counterintelligence. And actually, it didn't escape me when I can't remember who was reading it earlier when they started laughing when it said give lengthy and incomprehensible explanations when asked a question or something like that. And Timothy Wise sprung to mind. I don't know if it did for everyone else, but sometimes when you are talking to suspected, when you're talking to suspected racists, sometimes they do kind of just use that what's that word, circumlocucious sort of thing, what using many words when one word will do, right? There's in terms of, I think there's someone earlier that was saying about using other organizations that pretend that they're going to do something about racism, white supremacy, and they don't. So that's obviously a form of sabotage. There's a video, there's a one such organization called Anti-Racist Resources actually on Instagram, which I'm going to do a nice little video about soon as well. And so this has been an education. It's been quite interesting, this book.
Miss B. Very well said, Mr. Brian.
Thank you.
Hello. Also, I want to go back to the very beginning when they were talking about sabotaging like protests, and how at that part I was thinking about Black Lives Matter when people protest, and at least here in this city, in New York, they found, like, wherever they were protest, all of a sudden there'd be a random pile of bricks or sticks or something that's not normally there, and people were pointing that out in the news, and also there was a recording of a white guy, and he had on all black, and he had an umbrella up, and he had a hammer, and he was breaking windows, and the black people around were like, no, don't do that, because then we get blamed for that. And it was at a Black Lives Matter protest, and it also happened with other people as well.
But one thing that is so interesting is that the black people are telling this white person who's in good camouflage, don't do that, we will get blamed, not realizing that's the point. That's probably the point. So their response shouldn't be that, stop that, we will get blamed. And the response should probably be like, okay, now we're going to make sure the blame falls on you, and we're going to investigate you. Another thing I would like to point out is that this book is 70 years old. 70, 75 years old. That's almost a century. And there's most likely methods and techniques that are being used right now, which is, like this, what Helen just described. What Helen just described is coming from a book on how to disrupt political movements. I'm sure we might be able to find a book that has already been declassified, or it might be in one of the books that are not declassified. So like more up-to-date strategies are being used right now. But since they would probably come from this same field of military intelligence, some of the principles still there. They have this united independent approach. They have a whole bunch of strategies and tactics. And they make sure that they are invisible in plain sight, using like the bricks on the road. That sounds, yeah.
If anything, it sort of reinforces for me the would-be effectiveness of Neely Fuller's code book if followed by more non-white people, especially the part where it says about acts of simple sabotage multiplied by thousands of acts of simple sabotage multiplied by thousands of citizen saboteurs can be an effective weapon against the enemy, right? And I think if more of us, applied that sort of thing in relation to working against racism, white supremacy, that would be very, very effective. So this really reinforces for me the effectiveness of Neely Fuller's codebook. I think if adopted by more non-white people, I think it'd be very, very effective.
Well said. I think the document being so concise and to the point is a great example of how when in the business of race and white supremacy, white people are very direct, and they have no problem teaching their fellow white people how to do the same. So it allows me to understand the way they use words in a more overstanding way, because I'm now able to suspect that maybe they're using all these words not because they're like emotional, but maybe because they are intentionally attempting to practice racism against me by confusing me with their words or trying to distract me from my original question or point. But that was something I noticed. Miss B?
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Real briefly in the beginning, they also mentioned bickering, and in correlation with the code. You know how in the code they say VGQ, and you said what you said, and what else they say? And no name calling. So they mentioned how they use bickering as a way of division and cause problems and take the focus on whatever the protest is really about. And if you apply Neely Fuller's work, you know, the VGQ and no name calling, then that eliminates the bickering. And I suspect that there are a few popular YouTubers who constantly keep bickering going so that we won't focus on white people, so we won't focus on the problem.
Well, that's a great point, Helen, because I feel like there's more people especially like Black people who watch YouTubers, other Black YouTubers who are so-called like aware of racism and white supremacy. And you know how they'll have like the Dr. Umar Johnson versus like this person, and it's like that gets more views and more conversation than people actually talking about racism and white supremacy. It's very, very interesting. I also wanted to answer O5's question. It seems like it was declassified in 2008. And from what I see, like there was a big media push to make it seem like it was almost like a quirky, funny thing, like this simple sabotage manual. Like, oh, look at all the ways that this manual is similar to your boss at work type of thing. Instead of really, like, there's parts in here where, you know, they're talking about putting like spikes in trains and like putting faulty train cars. And that could kill like possibly like tens or hundreds of people. It's not really like anything, like there's a lot of serious things and it's that's what really interests me about it, is that they can just have like to produce an act of simple sabotage. They don't mind the fact that like other white people would die possibly from it, because like they're aware, I guess, that the greater good is more important than that, because some of these acts could have killed so many people. I'm sure they have killed many people if they've done them.
Yeah, that reminds me of the part where they're instructing simple saboteurs, racist suspects, race soldiers on how to create fires and burn down buildings And at the very last bit of that section, it mentioned the benefit of the fire possibly spreading to other areas in the vicinity. And that is just definitely a great indication that like the loss of life and non-targeted people's properties is of no loss to the system of racial white supremacy at all.
I just saw, I'm reading an article about the declassification, and it's not from the military, it's from the CIA. This document, written by the agency that was called Office of Strategic Services in 1944, which is which was the organization before the CIA.
Thank you for all the context, Mr. Silent Warrior.
Yes, the young lady was given good context too. But yeah, I mean, game is. I thought this was a constructive use of my time. Yeah.
I wanted to go back to the versus thing. When it comes to non-white people, a lot of energy is always invested. Time and energy is always invested in pitting them against each other. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but in the area of entertainment, there is this. I think it's sponsored or created or funded by BT. I could be incorrect, but there's a whole series where like Black artists, Black people who are being racially showcased as singers and dancers and musicians are like they have a sing-off / dance-off, and it's always like trending on Twitter. It's always very popular, and someone had mentioned like the intellectual versus matches with like Dr. Umar Johnson versus some other fellow. But yeah, when it comes to non-white people, the aura or whatever you want to call it, it's already there. Like non-white people dislike each other very much, and for the most part, they don't know why. They're unaware that everything that is constructed in the society is meant to project a certain ideology into their mind, and that ideology comes with behavior patterns that often attack Black people, other non-white people. So reading this manual has been really it's very interesting, because you see how simplified like terrorization can become. There is a show called Them, which I do not recommend, but there is a scene where like a white female, she put some sugar in her neighbor's gas exhausting. I thought that was really interesting. Reading that's been taught. Maybe she had access to it and read it. Who knows? Yeah.
Well said, Ms. B.
Also with this document, I think it's excellent counter-racism information. And I just finished Geronimo Pratt's book, Trial and Triumph, and a lot of the tactics in this reading was inside of The Last Man, Geronimo Pratt's story, and also in Invisible Man. Now, with The Invisible Man, I know it's a fictional book, but if you were to read it and think about a lot of the things that are going on today, then you'll see the strong connection, I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think something that's really interesting too is the um part 3 on page like 6, like motivating the saboteur, like how to incite the citizen. It reminds me of all of these lone, it was just a lone killer that like people who like killed Martin Luther King or like Malcolm X, or even like the like I because I know the CIA killed like the Kennedys too and stuff like that. I just think it's really interesting that it's always just like a lone gunman, and I think this it perfectly exactly shows how, you know, like the CIA and basically the white supremacists can set up a killing without actually having to get blood on their hands. And it just reminds me of all the people too, like overseas, who have been murdered by lone killers or who have been murdered by their second in command, like in Burkina Faso with Thomas Sankara and things like that. It makes a lot of sense how they can make like there's parts in here that are really interesting where it's like they like the ordinary citizen probably has no immediate personal motive for committing it, but you have to like basically almost like emotionally manipulate him and like make him understand that he's part of a larger network of spies who are all doing this work, and that the little thing that he's doing is just as important as like every other person. It's almost like they're like they literally are empowering every white person in every sector of society, down to like, I mean, not, I don't want to say down to because it's not a hierarchy, but like, you know, like like someone who is like working like janitor, like a janitor, has immense amount of power in terms of sabotaging the lives of non-white people. And you can, you know, convince that person that they have all of this power and that they're part of this larger network. And I just think that that's so interesting, especially when it has to do with the opposite, like countering racism or non-white people organizing, because it seems like everyone always wants to be a leader, or everyone wants to do something that's like glamorous. And I think that the code is really interesting because it's supposed to apply to everyone's life as they're living now. It's not like you have to just like quit your job and become a counter racist. Like you implement those strategies within where you are. So I thought that that was really interesting.
Really, really amazing points, Miss Ash. I agree that this is like a motivating tool to remind the racist suspects that who are white people, to remind them how, you know, we are still united independently in the ways that we choose to practice racism. And this is an example of how expansive their code of behavior is, because it really expands in so many ways, and a lot of it is very, very, very simple, and how they will mistreat people and then through simple sabotage. So I really got the united, independent message from this, but in the as if I was like a race soldier. You know, you get to see how they and even what you said about what the document mentioned, and how they're like all are working like spies working together for like a common goal, which is to refine and expand and maintain a system of white supremacy through their simple sabotage. And it's really, really great document to study, to see how white people practice racism, white supremacy, I believe. Was there anything else that anyone picked up from the document? I see Miss B may have something to share.
I have something. Ms. B, you want to go first?
No, you can go ahead.
So this document was reminding me of how we have, someone mentioned earlier, so many lone wolves. So this reminded me of Theodore Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber. who was mailing bomb packages and who was doing his own version of simple sabotage. And it makes me think about all the young school shooters in America who get their who have to plan what they're doing, because these are young children for the most part, and some of them are young teens. But I am starting to suspect that within the white psyche, no matter the age at this point, there is like a killer psychopathic element to it. So, for example, what kind of child wakes up and plans on this day, I'm gonna go get my parents' gun and I'm gonna go to school and I'm gonna kill as many people as possible. To me, that type of rationale can only foster and manifest, and in a society where the system of racism, white supremacy teaches Urugus, white people, that killing is fun, that killing is necessary, and killing is like it's their nature. There's films that are really popular in America called Natural Born Killers, American Psycho. All these films, I think, have not just the films, like all areas of people activity, create these white killers and these white Frankenstein monsters. And this is just another example of that. I know this book is circulating amongst white supremacist groups. I wouldn't be surprised if the Proud Boys are like the new Aryan Nation, or those little racist white supremacist biker gangs are not soaking up this information, and really learning, because Black people in America don't have neighborhoods because of sabotage. We just have these little concentration camps, and books like this could allow us to learn the ways of the enemy, and also gather some resources as well.
That's true, because they say children start to learn about racism at 6 months. So 6 months, it's already something that they're already being taught and learned. So I feel like when it comes to the non-white person, that's they have games and movies that teach them how to kill, as well for the white people. So it's either we're gonna get killed by a non-white person or we're gonna get killed by a white person. So it kind of juggles both ends of the spectrum because we're losing in both ends.
Sir, I don't know if you know, but Ted Kaczynski, I think I don't know if it was the OSS or the CIA, but at Harvard, they did psychological experiments on him. And there's a documentary I watched about it. So what you were saying about him committing like acts of simple sabotage is definitely accurate. I think the type of stuff they did on him was like really damaging. That's what I remember watching.
Yeah, and I believe he wrote about those things in his diary, and also his brother commented on some things. But I know a bit about I know a bit about the Unabomber.
Thank you for that context. Miss B, so you have a hand raised.
Yes, I want to be as accurate as possible, but there was a section in the manual about bridges, and you'd have to look this up because I want to be accurate. But there was something called Bridgegate that happened here a few years ago, and it had something to do with former Governor Chris Christie, and they actually shut down a bridge because of something that I think he was up for re-election or something like that. Please look that up. Please don't go by what I'm just saying, but I know the names are accurate. And um, and an EMS truck was on the bridge, and someone died because they weren't able to continue going on the bridge because they shut it down. They caused a huge traffic jam. And now, reading this manual, I'm like, oh, wow, that makes sense. This definitely has something to do with that. And the second thing that I want to mention, they mentioned something about cars. And when you take your car to the auto mechanic to get fixed, and how a lot of tricks are being played on the cars. And I've had attempted family members experience poor service from the auto mechanic. And now after reading this manual, I'm thinking, maybe it was done deliberately. I think it was done deliberately, definitely. And yeah, that's it for now.
Very, very well said, Ms. B. That part reminds me of how, and also in the document, just simple sabotage looks like what number 2 says. When the enemy asks for directions, give him wrong information, especially when enemy convoys are in the neighborhood. Truck drivers can spread rumors and give false information about bridges being out, ferries closed, and detours lying ahead. So even the act of like attempting to get help from a racist suspect in the form of like directions, like could be putting yourself in danger if they are wanting to practice racism or simple sabotage against you. It's just so deceptive. And this document is just a really great example of how confusion and deceit and it's just a huge component to how the system operates.
That reminds me of one of the questions that we asked the white people on the book club a couple of weeks ago, where they were saying,
I'm sorry to interrupt, Ms. Carice, but there's a lot of background.
I know, I'm in a car. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'll go ahead. I'll I can still hear you quite a bit.
Okay. When we asked the white people questions on Wednesdays, like a couple of weeks ago, and we asked, can they be like a ally, or like how do we are able to trust what you guys say without being, if it's deceiving, like how can we trust you? And I know one of the guys was saying, like, not all white people are untrustworthy. Like, you can't label us as all like that, but couldn't tell us why and how, or why should we label you guys like that. So that just reminds me of the spectrum of like how deceiving that we'll never know what we're getting in the situation of dealing with them in any aspect.
Really, really correct. Never know if they're lying to us or practicing some form of deceit or racism, unless we have part of our code that allows us to attempt to do that. Go ahead, Mr. Silent Warrior.
I would agree. I would support. I was thinking something similar to what Carice was just saying, especially with the very first question that we asked people when we decide to talk to them about or ask them questions about racism. Are you a white person? And we can have people that we think are non-white, or people that we think are white, or we can be very confused about that. And they themselves white people can be supportive of that confusion, and non-white people can be confused themselves and want to say that they're white. So I think for me, that what you said just reminds me the importance of getting a clear answer to the question about whether someone that we're not sure about is a white person or not. Because if the person is if the person says that they're not white, but you think they're ambiguous, the suggestion is to like kick back and observe them and don't say anything to them. And if they are, if it's a white person that's claiming to be non-white, you also kick back and don't say anything to them. But it's important to be able to identify people. What group are they in? Because if someone says that they are white, but you thought that they were non-white, if they're willing to say that they are white, that means they identify with all of the training or the behavior, or they've assumed that they have to behave in a certain way as white people. And that would seem to indicate that they have to practice racism. They have to put down black people. They have to not consider non-white people as humans. They have to, and also they have to not. They don't have to care about telling non-white people the truth because they're not human, or they don't deserve to be treated as humans. I'm still off of that Kill All the Brutes TV series. I mute my line. I think Ed had something to say.
Mr. Edwards, did you want to share a word? I think another thing that was another pattern that kept popping up was the techniques and tactics to be used to waste the so-called enemy's time, like simple sabotage, simply in the form of like a bus driver. This is from the text. Bus driver can go past the stop where the enemy wants to get off. Taxi drivers can waste the enemy's time and make extra money by driving the longest possible route to his destination. And I'm like, it reminds me of all like the times I've been in a Uber or any other taxi form of vehicle, and that this could have taken place. And reminded of what Helen said about the simple sabotage occurring when non-white people take their cars to mechanics. I heard about that occurring on one of the episodes of the Cows quite recently, where I believe a driver had their car sabotaged by a mechanic, possibly a racist suspect. So they have a great number of ways of wasting our time and energy as a form of mistreatment and practicing racism. The portion where they're recommending baggages on planes and luggage being lost or being sent to the wrong destination, costing a lot of stress and just anxieties amongst non-white people. And I'm like, could simple sabotage, racism, and white supremacy, of course, but just these tactics be one of the reasons why non-white people, particularly Black people, have such high stress levels and high health problems due to all this bombardment from simple task sabotage, racism, white supremacy, and just mistreatment in general. Because I've definitely had my luggage and been mistreated at an airport before. Ms. Helen?
Yes, I've been mistreated in cabs where they take, the long route, and I always thought it was to get more money, but maybe, there was another reason after reading this manual. And where I reside at, the building is maintained by non-white people, but white people they govern it. They allow the non-white people to manage the building. And I've noticed the poor service. Like when they come, there was a section in the manual where they're like, "Oh, well, we're gonna come and fix something." They go to your apartment first. They check it out. Then oh, I have to go get a wrench. Why don't you bring all your tools with you at one time? So they got to leave. They got to go find a wrench or a hammer or whatever. That's a few hours. And then they come back. Oh, I have the wrong part. Then I got to leave again. And just like wasting a lot of time and waiting until things are like worn down and then fixing it. And there was a section about like inferior products and, and oh, they're going to order the most expensive thing, knowing that that's going to take a long time to, to come to the building. And just that whole section, I was like, wow, oh, that's definitely happening where I reside at. Thank you.
Yeah, also, and them costing you time and energy could also be allowing them to make more money, because like they could be adding that time to them having to go get the tools and whatnot to their so-called hourly rate. So just like the taxi driver situation. So practicing racism, the system has set it up so that when a white person practices racism, they often get some sort of benefit from it, material benefit to say the least. Thank you for all the really great insight into this document. Was there any more?
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
Yeah, I was going to say that as more and more non-white people are using the word code, and seem to be organizing ourselves a little better, communicating a little better in terms of trying to figure out how to effectively eliminate system of racism, white supremacy. I think more of us are being encouraged even more to fight and belittle each other, and also fight with suspected white supremacists online as well. Does anyone have any sort of codified responses in dealing with suspected white supremacists in comment sections, or if there's a non-white person who's a little more confused, etc.? Has anyone got any kind of codified responses to that?
First thing I do is ask the person, are you a white person? Even if it doesn't matter what their profile picture is, ask them if they're a white person.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing to do is, you might have to spend some time on that. But then the second thing to do is ask for a definition of racism and white supremacy.
Aha. Okay.
And staying in the question mode and be like a bulldog. Do not let go until you get the answer for your question. Don't be distracted by name calling. Get the answers. And my goal whenever I've done that I know that non-white people are watching and white people are watching, of course, but have you ever heard Gus on the Cows talk to a white person or interview a white person?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I try to go for something similar in the comment section whenever I've done that. Then, within about 6 or 7 exchanges, just by, first you ask if that person is a white person, then you run the definition, and then you mainly work with questions and avoid. Sure as hell, do not try to teach or train any white people or anybody looking. And if a non-white person jumps in and tries to blah, 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 ignore them and stay on the white person. Ignore. Your best bet, the best thing I've ever seen come out of those things with regards to non-white people is probably a non-white person will contact you privately and say, hey, that was interesting. But in general, it's almost impossible for a non-white person to be impressed just through watching the comments, the back and forth between a white person and a counter racist. Unless they have a little bit of a counter racist inside themselves anyway. And yeah.
Thanks. That was good. That was good advice. Actually, I found that quite constructive. So just basically staying in the question lane. If it's a suspected white supremacist, asking for their definition of racism as well. Yeah.
First, you find out if they're white, because
if they're a white person, yeah.
You ask them, "Are you a white person?" And if they go back and forth, you can run Helen's question, which is, what does it say on your birth certificate? Some white people talk some white people talk about the 1/16th Native American and Irish and all kinds of blah blah. Ask them what it says on their birth certificate. You get that? I mean, I think non-white people seeing white people that are obviously white trying to snake their way out of something that is so obvious that they're white, that alone might help to make them be a bit more curious about counter racism. And then when you run the definition for race, ask them for a definition of racism. They drop their definition, then you can drop your definition. I mean, those two questions is enough. Those are two good karate moves to practice.
Thank you very much for that advice. I'll definitely
just
try
wax
that in
on,
the future.
wax off, wax on and wax off with those two moves. I've been doing that for the past year, and I'm still not solid. Okay, but those two moves are the best. Are really good. Wax on, wax off. Are you a white person? What's the definition of racism, white supremacy?
I will definitely try to apply that. Definitely. I mean, because I'm sort of new to this whole social media thing, really, and that's exactly what I've been finding. There's been a lot of, well, I'd say more confused than I am, even though I'm still confused. There've been a lot of confused, more confused non-white people, and a lot of suspected white supremacists who really, like, I guess, are trying to sabotage, like that code book says, and are trying to, I suspect, trying to waste my time or try and waste other non-white people's time and stuff, and getting us to argue with each other or argue with them in an attempt probably to get us thrown off of social media as well. So your advice there is really helpful. Yeah, thanks.
If I may make one last suggestion, it is that if you don't know the people in person or you've never met them, it's likely that they will lie to you and they don't feel any consequence because you're not a real person. You're just something on Facebook. So in general, I don't really, I've joined a whole bunch of Facebook groups last year after the George Floyd murder and trying to, talk and share. But if the group is especially large, it's like next to impossible to really have a good dialogue going. And remember, social media's main purpose is to keep you on social media so that they can increase your exposure to advertising. So there are algorithms, and the way that their like button and the way their comment sections and everything is set up is to keep you engaged. And topic like right, so they're keep you engaged, keep you like emotionally engaged, so you will feel like, oh, I have to defend myself or I have to embarrass this person, or then you keep staying on the Facebook group, but you're not necessarily learning much. Thankfully, like these two questions, are you a white person and what's your definition, like that's just your two karate moves, and you can practice that for the next 2-3 years, and you'll continue to collect data, and you'll begin to see a pattern from which you can learn from. So for social media, I think running those two questions, you can get some good data, over a year or so, and you'll see some patterns. And you can just kick back. I wouldn't ask any, I personally, I don't want to, there's so many books to read. There's so many books to read. And I'd much rather read a book by suspected white supremacists or white racists, like this white fragility book that I've been planning to read, than talk to some white person who's already trained to fuck with non-white people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're better. I feel I'm better off reading, spending my time developing my comprehension skills, my reading ability to like read what because the people that you talk to on Facebook, some of their talking points are like they're coming from the philosophies of the people who write the books. So take, for example, Tim Wise and White Fragility. Like White Fragility is the latest fashion now. And if you go to some of, like I'm on just one Facebook group that has white people talking about racism in it, and they love White Fragility and they love Ibrahim's anti-racist book. And I feel like they are. I suspect that this is not much different from what it was like in the 70s, where you had Black people talking about Black power, had wonderful Afros on, Afrocentric clothing, reading lots of books, or maybe not, or listening to good music, and being very outright about wanting justice and ending racism. And then white people saw that, they listened and they said, teach us, teach us. And they just took that information, put it in a feedback loop, and refined the system of racism, white supremacy. So some of these people on Facebook, they're also there to, they're either there to waste your time, or if they're there to so-called listen and refine their practice of racism, white supremacy. So I hit them with the 2 karate moves. Are you a white person? That makes it hard for them to practice deception. And what's your definition of racism, white supremacy? That makes it hard for them to practice deception as well. And so that's that's my. I hope that was helpful, sir.
Well said. The person who asked the question has parted, but I would add that I would highly recommend not having any long and drawn out back and forth with any individual on the internet. It could be a simple saboteur, just doing as he mentioned, trying to waste your time and energy. So maybe just try to make a statement indicating that we're in a system of racism and white supremacy, and the system of justice will be better, and leave it as that, or just don't engage at all. Is what I would recommend. Definitely reminded me of the document of just a ton of bickering being created amongst the Quislings, and I guess in the system of race and white supremacy, the Quislings are the enemies are the non-white people. So they have definitely done a wonderful job at producing tons of bickering amongst ourselves, and also amongst racist suspects who may even only be on Facebook interacting with non-white people as their refined way of practicing racism. Like that may be how they've decided to mistreat you, by pretending to care about racism and just talking about it in a really confusing and shallow way. That is something to think about. Was there any more comments to be shared about the text, or any other?
Yeah, I wanna say one more thing. It's just so much. This book reminds me of of a. So I went to a school called Paul Revere for middle school, and it reminds me of, I don't know why, but we were in a history course class, and I believe I was in the 8th grade, and Paul Revere was a middle school in Brentwood, California, which was a white suburb. And for some reason, the teacher, the curriculum involved us watching American History X, which is a white supremacist propaganda film. And after watching that film, the next day, like all the kids in the class were calling black people. They were calling us niggers, but they were saying vinegar. So a black person got up, they would say vinegar, you know. And there was a white student by the name of Hunter, who started bringing knives to school, and it just shows the psychological effects that a film could have on people. So now I'm looking at this simple sabotage manual, and then I believe that when black people, non-white people experience mishaps with their cars, first of all, like all mechanics are gonna try to scam and turn you into a forever customer. So I would just investigate fixing things yourself, or going to like someone who you can trust, who's not gonna ruin your car, have you coming back there in 3 to 4 months, because that's what the goal is. Just like hospitals, are engineered to make people sick and keep them sick, and then turn them to a forever customer. So back to this book. This book is gonna continue to train white supremacists, and so will films continue to do. So it's really important for us to read these types of things. Thanks 0526 for bringing this to my attention. Who knew how it's so amazing how much damage can be done with just a little manual such as this. And I believe that's it for myself.
I read on Business Insider that this was declassified in 2008. Isn't that when Obama took office? That brings support to your idea that this was declassified for white supremacists.
Interesting. Very well said, Mr. Sir. Yeah, every area covered. Tons, hundreds of reasons to be suspicious of white people can be found in this manual, because they're literally teaching how to disrupt and practice directly and or indirectly racism and white supremacy, whether it's through disruptions in the workplace, disruptions and just your mail being delivered on time, which can maybe if you're waiting on maybe money to come or maybe medication to come, can probably cause serious harm to you. So they are really they have it covered. They have the system of racism and white supremacy covered. That's why we need to really get serious about producing justice. It was just suggested to mention maybe simple sabotage in a really dangerous form. A simple sabotage is by Hardaway. Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, was killed, and I believe I'm correct in this, but it's always best for one to do their own research and the things that I mentioned on this broadcast. But I believe Brandon Lee was killed on set by a prop gun. Somehow a real bullet or somehow a prop gun killed him on set. So that's how Bruce Lee's son died. And that could very well be an act of racism or an act of simple sabotage.
And then Bruce Lee died
by someone giving him sleeping pills that killed him.
Yeah, and Bruce Lee was killed by, as what we just mentioned, being given a deadly dose of sleeping medication, I believe. So simple sabotage can be very deadly. It takes nothing but like household items to cause engines to start on fire when they've been started. Cause your car to go out of commission while you're driving it, due to it being sabotaged. So, and it could be no coincidence that there's a video game called Hitman Blood Money, where you are also given a chance to assassinate a target by switching their prop gun with a real gun, in the same manner that Brandon Lee was killed. So perhaps a way of the racist white supremacists glorifying what they did to Brandon Lee, victim of racism, and having us being able to do it in video games for fun. Really, really interesting, the refinement and continuation of this system and how it can be glorified in so many ways. Yes, mocking non-white people infinitely. Was there any other comments that someone wanted to make?
I just want to say that I learned a lot from everybody today, actually. So this is my first time joining you guys on this platform, and yeah, I'd just like to say thanks for everybody, because I learned quite a lot today.
Thank you, sir. I feel the exact same. So maybe we could get into closing comments. Would anyone like to start?
Oh yeah, I could go ahead and start. Very constructive use of time. This manual, kind of exposed more of, the activities that the suspected racists or confirmed white supremacists are up to. I can see how these, when put into daily practice, can be so effective in effectively keeping non-white people disorganized and preventing them from actually getting anything done. I can see this being done in multiple avenues, in multiple areas of activity. Specifically, I see a lot of this being done in like governmental agencies, when Black people are seeking constructive help because they need it. I can see a lot of this being implemented. So this was definitely a good read, and I thank everybody here for sharing their thoughts. I did learn a lot, so I look forward to the next discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I could go ahead and pick somebody. Silent Warrior.
Yeah, I thought it was I like to see I noticed the connection between this manual, Dr. Fuller's work. I'm grateful that it was so short, 36 pages. That's also typical of what I would imagine military intelligence work to be. And even though it's about 75 years old, I think you'd see like that currently white supremacy in the three-letter agencies, that they would be using manuals written in the same way with the same clearly listed objectives, good definitions, and a whole lot of examples for their practitioners. So I mean, if anything, it gives me more confidence in the code book. And yeah, thank you for the discussion.
Very well said. This is a great piece of information on COINTELPRO and how it's very important for victims of racism, individuals who are attempting counter racism should be aware of what COINTELPRO looks like and how it is practiced by white people, and as simple as causing confusion, causing disruptions, simple things taking multiple people to get done. I reminded of the part where it says, insist on doing everything through channels, never permit shortcuts to be taken in order to expedite decisions. And it also says, is it mentioned that to require like 3 people to make one decision. And I'm like, this is like all of how education, how all of my areas seem to be set up. You know, it's always set up and having to go through multiple people. So simple sabotage has is definitely like embedded into the system of racism and white supremacy. And I appreciate this document for just really showing the how racism and white supremacy is practiced, and what COINTELPRO looks like, the same COINTELPRO that was used to destroy the Black Panthers, put many non-white people in prison, and just create a whole lot of problems for non-white people. And to keep it going, I'll go ahead and popcorn smoking damages. I mean, Mr. Brian.
Yeah, I guess my takeaway from all this today is that, sorry for the interruption earlier as well, actually, I just, someone tried to call me on this number. And yeah, I would just like to say my sort of takeaway from this today is that whether the racists are using an actual tangible code book, or whether they practice their racism, white supremacy through osmosis, it is literally a code anyway, and they practice I think they knowingly practice racism, white supremacy, and it's not unconscious bias or anything like that. So yeah, that just shows, I think, that it's not unconscious, it's deliberate, and it's practiced, and they know that they're practicing racism, white supremacy. So I found today quite constructive.
Closing comments, anyone?
I'll go next. I found, yeah, I thought this was a really informative read. I really appreciated it. I learned a lot from it. Something that I'm interested in is like how their tactics have changed now because of, like the internet. And I think that's probably why they released it, is because a lot of these things may not be exactly as relevant. A lot of the tactics, like some of them are in terms of communication, but others may not be like as relative or relevant. But I'm interested in like the tactics that are used now. I think it's really informative. It makes me just think about a lot of things, like not just have happened to like me, but things that happen in people's neighborhoods. And I just wish that more people would read things like this, because I feel like sometimes when I talk to people who are not reading, they just make you seem like you're really paranoid or something. But I don't think I think that they're just afraid of really understanding what's really happening, because it's easier to exist in whatever like fun world that they're in. But that's all. I guess I'll pass it to Helen. Have you gone yet?
No, I haven't. I deeply appreciate the platform. And one quick thing about the manual, something that I wrote down about it. It's interesting how the news, aka white people, they were promoting Black Lives Matter, and they were always interviewing the members and really putting them out there. And now those same people are they're talking about how much the donations that they've received, and how one of the members, I think her name is something Colors, um, that she bought a few homes, and like the worth, like how the homes were, they cost like millions of dollars, and now people are trashing Black Lives Matter, and also some of the mothers who children were killed by police. And um, yeah, that's I think that's really dangerous. And even one of the members, she mentioned how dangerous that is, how they're mentioning, you know, how much money she's spending on homes and how much money her organization has received and stuff like that. And just wanted to say how I appreciate the platform, and I hope it keeps going.
Thank you, Miss B. Anyone like to share closing comments? Mr. Kwaku, Mr. Cert.
I think Kwaku already went.
Apologies. Mr. Cert. Alrighty, I think we'll be able to wrap it up. Truly appreciate everyone's insightful and comments. Definitely learned a lot from everyone who shared and truly a really important document. I hope to read more declassified works and to get a understanding on exactly how racism, white supremacy is practiced, since I'm unable to find a white person who will tell me. So truly appreciate being able to discuss this material with everyone. I hope that it allows us to counter racism, attempt to counter racism more effectively. Yeah, I'm gonna end it there.